The Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast is back for another episode. Join Marc S. Ryan, a veteran health plan and health technology executive, as he explores the world of healthcare.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast, where we take apart the complex machinery of healthcare policy, politics, and economics. My name is Marc Ryan, and thanks to everyone for listening in. Today, we're stepping a little outside my normal healthcare policy lane and diving into politics, specifically the 2026 congressional midterm elections. I am titling the podcast, The 2026 Midterms, the Affordability Election. We'll take our usual 3 breaks, so let's get right into it. Here's segment 1, setting the stage. History is not on the GOP side. Now, if you follow this show or read my blog, you know politics has always been a passion of mine. I've been involved at the local, state, and national level for decades, having run or helped run a number of election campaigns, as well as devising those infamous polls you're subjected to. So I always enjoy stepping back to analyze how elections are shaping up. And here's the main headline for the 2026 midterms. The House is very likely to flip Democratic. The Senate still leans Republican, but it's increasingly in play. Back on December 31st, 2025, when I wrote my annual healthcare predictions blog, I made 2 calls. First, I predicted Republicans would hold the Senate with somewhere between 51 and 53 seats going into 2027. Second, I predicted Democrats would win back the House, gaining 20 to 30 seats. Today, the margins in Washington are razor thin. Republicans hold 218 seats in the House, Democrats 214 with a few vacancies. In the Senate, Republicans have 53 seats to 47 for Democrats and aligned independents. So the battlefield is wide open. But to understand where things are going, we need to step back a bit and talk about midterm history, because midterms follow patterns for the most part. And those patterns usually are brutal for whoever occupies the White House. I look back to every midterm election since 1934, and the president's party almost always loses ground. In fact, there have only been 2 clear exceptions where the president's party gained seats in both chambers in the midterms. One was during the Great Depression under Franklin Roosevelt. Another came after the September 11th attacks during George W. Bush's presidency. A third, occurred during Bill Clinton's impeachment fight in 1998, when Democrats gained seats in the House and maintained in the Senate. In other words, historically unusual moments. Outside those rare cases, midterms are a political gravity well pulling the president's party downward. Just look at some examples. John F. Kennedy lost House seats in 1962. Richard Nixon lost House seats in 1970. Ronald Reagan lost 26 House seats in 1982. Donald Trump lost 40 House seats in 2018. Joe Biden lost seats in 2022. History is clear. The White House rarely wins midterms, even if the president is popular. Which brings us to the current environment. President Donald Trump is sitting with an approval rating in the low 40s, about 43% or so as of this taping. Even worse for Republicans, only about 37% of Americans believe the country is moving in the right direction. And perhaps most important of all, Republicans are starting to lose their edge on the 2 issues that brought them to power in 2024. The economy and immigration. But the real political landmine, the issue that sank Democrats in 2024, is now threatening Republicans in 2026. You guessed it, that's affordability. And healthcare affordability is right at the center of it. With that, we will take our first break. Be right back.
Health plans and insurance are confusing. Our healthcare system is in dire need of reform. Health policy expert Marc Ryan tackles both issues in his book, The Healthcare Labyrinth. It is both a guide to navigating health plans and fixing American health insurance. Marc dives deep into how health plans and the American health insurance system operate. He then outlines a comprehensive reform agenda for the system as a whole, including pricing, emphasizing health and care management, and ensuring affordable access to health coverage in a private delivery model. Marc is a bit of an unconventional Republican in that he believes affordable access is the morally right thing to do, and that it is also fiscally prudent for our nation. Learn more about Marc's book, The Healthcare Labyrinth, at healthcarelabyrinth.com or search at leading bookseller websites. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook forms.
Welcome back. We are digging into the coming 2026 midterm elections. Let's go on to segment 2, the affordability election. Let's talk about the issue that may decide the midterms, not ideology, not cultural issues, not even immigration. The biggest issue right now in America is affordability. Remember what happened in 2024? Vice President Kamala Harris and Democrats were hammered over inflation and cost of living concerns. It didn't matter how strong the job market was. It didn't matter what the GDP numbers said. Voters simply felt that life was too expensive. And honestly, the Democrats failed to realize that. Groceries, housing, insurance, healthcare, Democrats paid the price over really high cost. But here's the twist. 2 years later, Republicans have fallen into the same trap. Costs are still rising and voters don't see relief, and the GOP just doesn't realize it. It doesn't have a coherent agenda. Add to this that we are in a relatively unpopular war right now. The rallying around the president has not happened as it usually does with the Iran war. As well, oil prices may stay high for some time no matter how long the war lasts. The oil prices could drive prices at the pump and inflation upward. It could zap economic growth. This makes the affordability issue even worse for the GOP going toward November. The GOP tends to dismiss the issue of healthcare affordability specifically, but polls show that healthcare affordability is increasingly top of mind for Americans. A new West Health and Gallup survey found that 1 in 3 Americans had to cut back on daily living expenses to afford health care last year. Think about that. That's about 82 million people forced to sacrifice something else in their budgets just to pay medical bills. For uninsured Americans, the situation is even worse. About 62% say they had to cut spending elsewhere to afford care. Among lower-income households making $24,000 or less a year, more than half reported making similar trade-offs. Even middle-income Americans earning between $24,000 and $48,000 a year are feeling the squeeze. Almost half also say they had to cut spending. That's not a small policy issue. That's a political earthquake. And it's happening while the healthcare industry continues to grow rapidly. A modern healthcare analysis shows healthcare revenues grew 8.6% in 2025, faster than the rest of the services sector. Prices are rising, demand is rising as the population ages, and patients are paying the price. So politically, the environment looks like this. Democrats are campaigning on cost of living, Republicans are defending their policies, and voters are asking a very simple question. Why does everything still cost so much? That's why the midterm numbers are starting to shift. The generic congressional ballot, a key measure of national sentiment, currently favors Democrats by about 5 points. And that advantage could grow if affordability continues to dominate the political conversation and oil prices continue to undermine economic growth. With that, we will take our second break. Be right back.
Lilac Software is proud to work with the Healthcare Labyrinth website to educate people on the healthcare system. At Lilac, we believe transparency is so important in healthcare. The healthcare system is opaque, and Lilac is trying to bring clarity to data and unleash the best member care, reduce costs, and improve outcomes. Our cloud-native payer platform revolutionizes data insights and analytics. Plans have all the data they need, but in silos locked away in point solutions. At Lilac, we solve the data fragmentation problem and help plans turn complex data into actionable insights, leading to greater operating leverage, tight cost controls, and healthier members. Health plans can improve STAR scores, reduce medical expense, drive revenue, and more. Quite simply, with Lilac, you can drive better business and health outcomes. Learn more at lilacsoftware.com.
Welcome back. We are talking all things midterm elections, and we are branding it the affordability election. On to segment 3, the Senate battlefield. Let's turn to the Senate, the upper chamber where the political math gets complicated. What am I predicting as of now? Well, Republicans currently hold 53 seats, as I pointed out, and 35 seats are up for election in 2026. Of those, 22 belong to Republicans and 13 to Democrats. So Republicans are defending far more states than Democrats in this election. Right now, I see about 7 races that are competitive. Here's how they break down. Michigan, I think it's a toss-up. North Carolina, a toss-up. Georgia, toss-up or leaning Democrat. Maine, toss-up. Ohio, leans Republican. Alaska, leans Republican. New Hampshire, leans Democrat. Senate races are interesting because they are less tied to national political waves than House races. Candidate quality matters more. State dynamics matter more. But national trends still exert pressure on these elections. Prediction markets have noticed the change over the past several months. Last November, markets gave Republicans about a 75% chance of holding the Senate. What about today? Well, closer to 53 or 54%. In other words, still favored, but barely. So what are the possible outcomes that I see? Best case for Republicans, they reach 54 seats, picking up 1 or 2 Democratic states while losing none or just one of their vulnerable seats. Worst case, a Democratic wave flips several Republican seats and Republicans fall to 49 seats, losing the chamber. But the most likely outcome, in my view, remains this. Republicans hold 51 or 52 seats. That would likely require losing North Carolina and perhaps one other competitive seat. Now let's talk about a few wild cards. One is Senator Susan Collins of Maine. Collins has been politically underestimated for decades. Every election cycle, analysts seem to predict she'll lose. Every cycle, she somehow survives. But this race may be her toughest yet because she has supported several initiatives from the Trump administration, which could complicate her usual bipartisan appeal. Another wild card is Alaska. With ranked choice voting and a competitive Democratic challenger, that race could produce surprises. Still, at the end of the day, the Senate remains a Republican-leading battlefield. But it is definitely closer than it looked 6 months ago. With that, we will take our last break and come back to talk the lower chamber, the House of Representatives. Be right back.
The Healthcare Labyrinth is no ordinary website. It features news and commentary from one of the nation's leading healthcare policy and technology experts. Marc Ryan combs the internet for the latest healthcare news and publishes a news feed each weekday with summations and Marc's insights. Twice a week, Marc publishes a blog to go deep into a current issue. And of course, Marc hosts a podcast each week to delve even further. All of this is available at healthcarelabyrinth.com. Visit each day for the latest happenings in healthcare. As well, learn more about Marc's book, The Healthcare Labyrinth, at the website. That's healthcarelabyrinth.com, your go-to source for healthcare news.
Welcome back. We are talking all things midterm elections. I gave you my predictions for the August Senate. Now we move on to segment 4, the People's House, why Democrats are likely taking it back. Now let's talk about the House of Representatives. Here, the math is simpler and much more dangerous for Republicans. Prediction markets and political models are remarkably aligned. Both Kalshi and Polymarket estimate about an 85% probability that Democrats will control the House in 2027. Why? Because of structural realities. Due to gerrymandering and district design, analysts estimate Republicans have about 202 safe seats. Democrats have somewhere between 194 and 197 safe seats. That leaves roughly 36 to 39 competitive districts. That's only about 8 to 9% of the entire House. That is a travesty that must be addressed over time. But so much for that. These 36 to 39 districts are where elections are always decided, and those districts are extremely sensitive to national sentiment. When voters swing by just a few points, dozens of seats can flip. That's exactly what happened in 2018 when Democrats took back the House during Trump's first presidency. So what are the possible outcomes this time in the lower chamber? My prediction late last year was that Democrats would gain 20 to 30 seats, ending up with 235 to 245 seats. I'm adjusting that somewhat down now, even though things are getting tighter. That's based on redistricting and some local dynamics. My updated estimate is that Democrats will likely end up with 220 to 230 seats, leaving Republicans with 205 to 215. Still a Democratic majority, just not as large as I initially projected. But here's the key caveat. If Republican popularity continues to erode, particularly over affordability, Democrats could still approach my earlier prediction. That's because many competitive districts are now open seats due to retirements, and open seats are notoriously volatile in wave elections. So the final picture for 2027 could look something like this: a Democratic House majority, a Republican Senate majority, though smaller, and a Washington government that is, once again, divided. If the Democrats take even one House, Donald Trump immediately becomes a lame duck. To effect change, he would have to go even more in on regulations, executive orders, and government fiat, which means the next 2 years could feature legislative gridlock, aggressive oversight investigations, and intense political warfare heading into the 2028 presidential race. But the bigger story may be something else. For the third straight national election, American voters appear to be sending the same message to Washington: fix the affordability crisis, or we'll fire whoever is in charge. Democrats learned that lesson in 2024. Now Republicans may be learning it in 2026. And unless someone in Washington figures out how to bring down the cost of healthcare, housing, and daily life, that political cycle is going to repeat itself again and again. Thanks for listening to the Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with colleagues interested in healthcare policy. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep navigating the healthcare labyrinth with me. We will find our way out together. Again, I am Marc Ryan. This is the Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast. See you next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining Marc and the Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast. Go to healthcarelabyrinth.com each day for the latest healthcare news. See you next week on the next Healthcare Labyrinth Podcast.